For the moment, but will it be all night? Plus, it's just a little comfort to have your phone close by, right? No, I don't know why. You did, yeah. How did you even get home without it? Yeah, I agree. Yeah, there's stuff we need. Andy, would you word our prayer tonight? I know you can, will you? Yes, okay. Yeah. Sue, okay. Good. Jeff, are you going to be here Sunday? So you'll be watching for Shirley. Anybody else out there, watch for Shirley. Yeah, good, good. Phyllis used to pick her up, but Phyllis is not feeling capable with her imbalance to do that safely. Yes. I also talked to Phyllis because Shirley was saying she was interested in coming to the lunch. If I need to go pick her up on Tuesday so she can be at lunch, I want you to be aware that if something gets said that we can figure out how to do that. Jim may be here too, and we'll figure out how to get her here safely. So, right. I was thinking more from her door to my car. So, yeah, once we get her here, we're set up for that. Jim Herndon left the house, so that's good. He went in to the office for at least a little while Monday. I didn't hear about. No, Tuesday. I think he did go home. I didn't hear about today. Did you? Do you know? But he's reporting it's better. It's not quite all the way there, and he has an appointment on Thursday to evaluate whether surgery might be the route or not. But there was encouragement that he actually got out of the house. So your MRI, yeah, it'll be a while before you hear, I guess. Yeah. Okay, so hopefully he'll have the results and you'll know something next week. And Bobby's procedure still seems to have got the rhythm back, and yeah. So right. Might take a while before that all settles back in, but it is good to know the rhythm has been corrected. Um, did reach out to Clay Wilkerson this week. He's in Arkansas. He's moving both of his parents into a nursing home, and he said he's going to be there for several weeks while that process is taking place. I'm sure they're getting the parents comfortable, and then he didn't say, but I'm assuming there's closing up of the house and doing something with all the material or all the items of the house. So let's keep him in our prayer as well. Anybody else we need to update on? Sue, anybody else you know about? Okay. Okay. So he's not responding even though the treatment's restarted. I know you've been praying for him, and we'll just continue to join the family in those prayers. November 5, right? It's our next singing, so make sure you have that marked on your calendar. Anything else coming up we need to talk about? Next elder lunch is going to be November 12th. We had one this past Sunday, and donuts tonight. I was going to say about Sunday, I just like hanging around Sawyer because he's just coming out of his shell all over the place. Like he never had been shy or anything. So he asked several insightful questions and kept me in line, which I need all the help with that I can get. So it was fun. All right, Andy, you want to lead us, please? Amen. Thank you, Andy. Nice prayer. I will report Buddy was in good spirits. Denise and I saw Lowell, but we refused to talk to him. Well, I did say something to him, but he was sound asleep in the chair. And I think his hearing aids were off. I jumped up and down and no, I wasn't quite that vivacious, but it was clear he was, his mind was in a different place for a moment, dreamland. But he looked well, his color was good, and I think we'd heard something different if that wasn't happening. Thought we'd talk for a moment about, I got my daily Bible in, just so you kind of see what this is about the third cover I've seen on one of these, okay? Are we match to match? Is your soft cover? Okay. Okay. Oh, and you got the large print. So here's all three of them. Well, and this is just helpful to see because I went hardcover because I'd had soft cover before. The benefit in the soft cover will be it lays open better. You know, the spine is not as strong, and so it'll be good for laying open and reading once you get a few pages in at least, right? But these are basically the same size. So this is the hardcover. And, you know, really, there's a lot of pages in these things, but they found some really thin paper. So even though the footprint's just a little bit larger, not too much, And I would think it would show up in the thickness, but there's really not a whole lot of difference. This one's a little thicker because I can fit that in that groove, but that's what the large print looks like. And I'd encourage you to kind of get familiar with it, because there's a lot of little symbols, like this means that's the start of the day reading. It kind of looks like a little sunshine. And so you read from this one to the next one. That's your day's reading, and then that way it's easy to keep up. But one of my favorite parts of this are these gray boxes. He does a really great job of giving some background context, in this case kind of at the end of the reading, and certainly often at the beginning of the reading as he goes through it. And I think he's done a really nice job, a really thoughtful job in helping understand what's happening, particularly because, like right here in this reading, you're in Ezekiel, and now you're in Jeremiah. So it's not your traditional verse 1 of Jeremiah all the way through. So particularly when he's changing books, sometimes you'll get a little more explanation for that reading. But I love the way it's laid out. I'm going to flip and try to find, and particularly this happens even more in the Gospels. Yeah, here's a good one. So the story, Jesus blesses the children. Well, it's in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. He didn't put all three of them here. He puts the story in there once, and over here in the side column, you have, in order, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and the one that's bolded is the text that he used. But if you want to go and read it in the other places, it's right there for you to have your other Bible and flip over and read it. So I think they've been really thoughtful of making this a good study tool, as well as a good method for reading straight through. So I just wanted to highlight that, as Clark's already had several orders, made several deliveries, and we'll continue that for a little bit more time. Well, let's do some Sermon on the Mount. And I thought I'd start tonight by, we'll start out in Luke tonight, because there's a little bit that we need to finish up, particularly because it's different than the Matthew reading. But talk about, trying to think how to phrase this, the purpose, how we can use the Sermon on the Mount. Because this is certainly very applicable to us today, and it certainly is not easy. It's not just a quick list, a checklist of things to do, but it's a very challenging way to live. And I think maybe that's what I want to lean into as we talk about the Sermon on the Mount. We're hearing about Jesus' way of living, how he moved through the world. And it was very different from the Pharisees, right? Oftentimes came into clash with the Pharisees. It was very different, as he claimed to be Son of God and Messiah, than what the people thought. Even his closest apostles, what they thought that would look like. But what we know now, looking back, is John tells us, with him living among us, he's the very image of God, right? And so if he is showing us how he moved through the world, to me it's not even a jump, a leap. It's not any kind of separation to think he is showing us how to live in this world. Well, did he face all the things we face? No, he never had to decide how much time to spend on social media. Right? But if he had lived during our time, he would He would have lived with that. It's up to us to understand who he was and take that how it impacts us. I like to think of it in terms of his life draws us to the beautiful, what is good, and he draws us into that goodness by the way he lives. And mostly that shows up not in keeping the rules, but how he interacts with people. What does that mean? What does that look like? Sometimes we take these listings through these Matthew 5 and Luke 6, and it's like we have an ethical puzzle and we're trying to solve them, right? We're trying to find the answer, and then we know how to act. And I don't want to push on that too much, because I do believe what he tells us and shows us should inform and form the very way that we act, but not in a rule-based, robotic way of interaction. It's more of a style than a set of rules, right? You probably work for companies and you start day one, they give you the company rules, right? That's what you get. It's more than that. It's a way of living. And it's, as we hear, is different than what people expected. And for me, that means you got to practice it all the more. So I have been looking for a way to talk about this, and I ran across a guy talking about this the other day, and I like this. What Jesus is teaching us with these things is how to do improv. Okay, it is not a script that is read and repeated, right? We're not actors saying our lines. It is, we're faced with a situation, and thinking on our feet, we have to decide how to act, right? Think of some of your encounters. Something happens, and you react in some way. Sometimes, you're not so proud of the way you reacted, right? And other times, you step back after the crisis is over, and you go, you know, I'm really glad, I'm really proud of the way I handled that. Doesn't mean it fixed everything, but you have some pride, godly pride, the right kind of pride that says, I acted like I understand Jesus would have acted. That's what I mean by improv. You don't get to have the lines ahead of time. So how, are you familiar with improv? Are any of you improv actors? If I said tonight we're doing improv, what would your response been? Stayed home, exactly. Right? And why would you have stayed home? Don't know how to do it because haven't practiced it. You haven't been doing it. And so instead of even, improv doesn't mean you just do whatever you want when it happens. Good improv actors are good because they have practiced over and over and over again, and they've learned things. Because in good improv, what do they do? They feed off of each other, right? Clark throws something at me I'm not expecting, and then I kind of take it and do something with it, and I throw it back at him. And, right? That's the picture I want us, as we read through this next part. How are we drawn to the beautiful, and how does that beautiful draw us to good? And that beautiful I'm talking about is the way Christ moved through the world. And for me to do what Christ did, to move through the world as he moved, I'm going to have to practice a lot. And it's not about, for me then, it changes from being did I get it right or wrong, to more, am I getting closer to the way Christ would have responded? Right? Because when I start out, I may be way over here, but I'm moving in a direction that says I'm getting deeper and closer to how he lived and moved through the world. So maybe here's the question. Did the people who I encountered today feel safe, seen, and loved? After their encounter to me, did they leave with that? So the people on the street corner, I'm not asking whether you gave them money, helped them, what you even thought about that. But did they feel seen? I passed one on the way to church. I looked him in the eye and I said, I don't have anything for you. Can he at least be seen? Because if you want to be unseen, go out and take you a little cardboard sign and stand there for a while and just see what you get. Right? I've done this with high schoolers, and their sign might say, I'm just looking for a smile. Right? Nobody reads the sign. Nobody engages. Nobody sees. On occasion, I mean, it was like a huge victory. Somebody said, they smiled. Right? Or another thing we did was we went to a busy place in downtown Denver and had them walk up to somebody and say, and we chose the language carefully. It started out, can you spare? And what do they think is coming? A dime, or it's a little more now. Can you, or what they typically say is, can you spare the change? In fact, that happens so much, the street kids in Denver made up a word, it's called spange. Spare change. Can you spare the change? Because somebody coming out, they might not give you a lot, but they might give you the 75 cents they have in their pocket. But they weren't saying, can you spare the change? They were going to say, can you spare the time? Do you know what time it is? And most of the times they didn't get the time, right? Everybody thought they knew what they were going to hear. One thing Jesus did well was he helped people know that they were seen by him. We do have something to offer. It's not necessarily fixing every problem. But people change when you hear their story, right? They change how they react to us and how we react to them. And what this next part in this Sermon on the Mount, it's going to challenge us to do that, right? Not with the people that are easy. And sometimes we miss that, right? Sometimes we miss it at church. Now, I'm not picking on you because I think this is something we do well, okay? But I've been in places that they do not. A church of 600 and somebody who's not been there, and everybody knows they've never been there before walks in, and not a person talks to them. How can that happen? Now, we tackle them at the door, and they're tackled 3 more times before they sit down, okay? So don't hear me. I'm just using that because you're aware of that dynamic. You've gone to places and walked in, and it's like they're all laughing, having a good time. Nobody even sees me, right? Yeah, you're not part, and we're not sure we even want you to be part, even if you're considering it, right? So how do we get there? We just don't make it up, but in the smallest ways we practice it. And we practice and we do it and we do it and we do it where it's easier, right? we do it with people that we trust and know. I mean, that's what we do with our kids, right? With the hope being that it just doesn't stop with everybody that's in the circle. Paul said it this way, Philippians 4. I want you to hear this verse that you know in this context. Starting verse 8, or only verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is worthy of respect, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. If something is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. That's what our attention to Jesus does, and it focuses us, and it helps us then in situations he never encountered to figure out how we're going to react and how we're going to live. So it's not a moral list of do's and don'ts. It's about building those habits. I mentioned this on Sunday. You develop routines, and those routines turn into habits. You're on automatic, and we need to have lots of those, right? You get to the door first, what do? What? Going in the building. You get to the door first, going in the building, what do? You do what? Do you make that decision every time you go to a door? No, you've done it enough times, it's automatic, right? You already decided that's what I'm going to do, you practice it, and it becomes that habit, right? Need lots of those. The other side of that, we also talked about the ritual, where we make it even more intentional. I'm going to do this for this person, for this reason, or when this trigger happens, this is what it's going to mean. When I put my food in the food bank box, I'm going to pray for the people that are going to get it. It's going to be more intentional than just a habit. Nothing wrong with a habit, but they're developed by these routines. And I think that's what we're being invited into. So we don't have memorized lines, but we have practiced reactions. So let's go to Luke chapter 6. At the end of Jesus saying, blessed are those, Luke is different than the Matthew passage, because not just blessings, he says, no, wait a minute. This is a problem. Whoa. Right? That's not WHOA. It has nothing to do with horses. It's a warning. But woe to you who are rich, for you have received your comfort already. Woe to you who are well satisfied with food now, for you will be hungry. Woe to you who laugh now, for you will mourn and weep. Woe to you when all people speak well of you, for their ancestors did the same things to the false prophets. So as he said, he doesn't want you to be nice, he doesn't want you to have money, and he doesn't want you to have food. You can't see it, but Kelly's back here eating dinner. We don't want her to, you should be hungry, right? No, that's not what he's saying, right? You're not living in your spiritual nature, right? We get that. We understand that. And it also, what does it show? What's important to us? What does it show? How we act, how we live our life out. What does it show? It shows our real values. Not the ones that we say we have, but the ones we actually live. I've been around, and again, it's not a glorification of being poor, but I've found many poor people to be very generous. You say, well, what do they have to be generous with? And it's, well, what they have. I've known many wealthy people to be very, very generous, right? So that's not the determining factor. What is? We say it's heart. They probably said heart. It's our true values, right? How we're, and that's what Jesus is calling us to here. You live by your spiritual nature, you're going to be blessed. You live taking care of yourself, well, you got it. You took care of yourself. You already got it. There's no bonus points or anything. Let's go on verse 27 and bring this next part in. I like the way it's worded, but I say to you who are listening. He said it to everybody, but he's like, I know some of you are listening, and some of you want to know this, and some of you, it matters. I'm talking to you, right? It is frustrating to be trying to say something and no one's listening. As a youth minister, I got to experience that from time to time. I remember one time I had a group together and we were about to go on a trip or something. I don't remember what it was. And I do remember this. I was trying to tell them something they needed to know. This wasn't just optional. And they were not. They were all over the place. And I just sat down and I waited. It took them like 15 minutes to figure out, this is how tuned out they were, that I wasn't talking anymore. It took about 15 minutes. And some of them started noticing, and they sat down and got quiet, and a few more joined them. And finally, the room was silent. And they were scared because they didn't know what was going to happen. And I just said, you know, when I'm trying to tell you something you need to know and you don't care to listen, I said, I feel like crap. Then I said, now, are you ready to listen? And guess what? They were very attentive, right? It wasn't, I didn't need to yell at them, but I did want them to know their behavior had an effect, right? It mattered. It meant something. And they appreciated not getting reminded of what they already knew in a very rude way. So I like this. Jesus said, some of you are listening out there. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Okay, if we just want to talk about tough, let's just take this one. We don't want to talk about any of the others, just this one. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. I need to practice that, right? If I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to do it over and over and over, and it's going to start with people probably that I'm frustrated with that are close to me. Don't give me a total stranger to start out with, because it's too easy just to write them off and feel justified in treating them in however way that I treat them, right? So when we say Jesus is showing us how he moves through life, to me, this one comes to the forefront. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. And a time, and I don't know that you keep, it's worse than it's ever been before. American politics, worse than it's ever been before. We've had these kind of politics from the beginning. Go back and read the history, right? I just think it's more of the same. We don't have to worry about whether it's better or worse. We do focus on, am I responding in the way that Christ would have moved through the world? Then he gets real practical about what he means. To the person who strikes you on the cheek, offer the other as well. Now, this is another reason why we can't just make this a rule. We have to understand the context it's being said in. Does it make it any easier? He's not saying someone's never going to get struck when attacked. He's not saying you can't defend yourself if a robber falls on you. What's he talking about? Well, to get hit on the right cheek, how am I going to get hit? Somebody's right-handed to hit me on the right cheek is going to backhand me. It's an insult. Different cultures do the insult different ways, right? Yeah, basically. And you know about honor cultures, right? If your honor is, then you have to defend it. That was the whole dueling with pistols, right? Or sabers, or however they did it. It was about the honor and protecting the honor. And Jesus comes along and says, if they strike you, if they insult you, give them the other cheek as well. And did he live that? Well, he had a few insults. They called him a glutton. They called him a drunk. He had to be an illegitimate child, right? He was a blasphemer. They called him a madman. He didn't go around So when he tells us this, it's just not something that sounds nice. It's something he lived out, and we do have some evidence of how he moved through the world. He knew what he was doing and for what purpose, and that he didn't allow what others might have thought he was doing, whether they understood or not. He didn't take it as an insult. I think sometimes we are too easily offended. And the problem with that is then it becomes a fight and we lose the opportunity to be a witness. Yeah. And does that mean we're going to always be correct? No, the way we move through the world is when we do something wrong, what do? Well, that's what we typically do, right? Put blame somewhere else. But what should we do? Make it right. Make it just. Apologize. Say, I didn't do that right. I hurt you. That was wrong. It's hard to fight when you're agreeing with the person who's trying to be mad at you. I mean, as a youth minister, I didn't always handle everything right, and mothers will let you know that in a very forceful and direct way. And, you know, when they were right, I just said, you're right. And it didn't turn into a problem. It helped. Right? When I'm wrong, I want to be shown where I'm wrong. And then there's this statement. And from the person who takes away your coat, do not withhold your tunic either. So does that mean we give our shirts off our back when somebody walking down the street say, Ken, I like that shirt. I'm going to need it. Oh, it's got ink stains on it? Okay, wait. Yeah, kind of torn up. Right. So what's going on here? Well, that's where we'll start next week. Because we have donuts tonight. And we say once again, thank you, Jeff and Julie, for your kindness for donuts. Woo! You better get there before Jim, because coconut's one of his favorite. He had coconut cake for his birthday, so yeah.